There is one more way to make REST API calls from one microservice to another microservice. So that's called as OpenFeign Library of Spring Cloud. So this is part of Spring Cloud framework, and in this case we need to create an interface, and then we need to add some annotations to that interface. Then this Feign library will create dynamic implementations of that interface. So to use this OpenFeign library, we can add a dependency to our pom.xml file. In the pom.xml, we can add a dependency, and as the group ID, we can give org.springframework springframework.cloud, and as the artifact ID, we can give spring-cloud starter-openFeign. So after that, we can click the load Maven changes. So we are getting this error, could not find artifact org.springframework.cloud. Okay, let's go to Spring Initializer and let's look for the OpenFeign. And if we go to explore, we see here that dependency in the pom.xml. Let's copy this and let's paste it here. Also, let's go to the pom.xml file again. And in this dependency management section, we can see this org.springframework.cloud, spring-cloud-dependencies, and there's a version here. Then the type as pom, scope as import, and likewise we have this dependency management section. So let's copy this one, and in our pom.xml, just below dependencies, let's paste that. And we can do one more thing. Here there is a version, and in the properties section, we need to add that version. So we can see here spring-cloud.version in the properties section. Let's copy this And in our pom.xml under properties, let's add that. And I click the reload all Maven projects. Okay, this time still it's working, importing Maven projects. Okay, now I think it's okay now. So we don't see the uh, red squiggly marks anymore. So it looks good now. So the dependencies have now resolved. So we added this in the properties section, we added this version, Spring Cloud version, and also we added this dependency management section just below the dependencies, and we added this dependency. The next step is in the order service application, we have to add one annotation. We have to add at enable Feign clients annotation. So we need to add this because once we add this will enable the component scanning for interfaces that declare as Feign clients. So we are going to use another annotation called at Feign client in one of the class. So by adding this at enable Feign clients annotation in this order service application, that will enable the component scanning for the interface that we are going to declare later with the at Feign client annotation. So the next step is I'm going to create that interface called API client, and this interface I'm going to define in my service package. And I'm going to annotate this interface with at Feign client, and I have to provide a URL. The URL should be which microservice that we are going to access from this order service microservice. So the URL for that we need to provide. So we don't need to provide any endpoints. We just need to provide the port number and the host for the microservice that we are going to access from our order service. So in our case, it is http://localhost:8081. Let me confirm by going into application.properties file of customer service. Yes, it's 8081. And also we can give a value here. As the value, I'm going to give customer hyphen service. And inside this interface, I'm going to define a method which is identical to the get customer method of this customer service. So the return type is customer DTO, and I can give the method name get customer by ID, and let's go to the controller. So we are passing a path variable called ID. I'm giving that at path variable, and I'm giving the ID as the path variable, and this is type of long customer ID. So next I'm going to give that long customer ID. We just need to define it. We don't need to create the method here. We are only going to define it. And on top of that method, we need to give that get mapping, similar to what we are giving in the customer controller. Get mapping with path variable. Here in the customer controller, we are giving only the path variable, because in the at request mapping, we are giving the rest of the part of the URL. So, but here in our API client, we are only giving the host name and the port in the URL. Because of that, we have to give the rest of the part of the URL as well. So in that get mapping, I'm going to give like this, because here we only specify the http://localhost:8081. So if we don't give this part, it will not know where to go for this get customer by ID method, right? So because of that, we are giving this part, and also we are giving the path variable as well. But in our customer controller, because we are giving the base URL in the at request mapping, in the path variable, we can only give this ID. But in API client, we have to give the rest of the path in addition to the host and the port number. So now we define the method in our API client interface, and we annotate that with @feign client with the host and the port number. Next, we have to go to the Order Service IMPL class. And this Order Service IMPL class, in this get order by ID method, we need to call this API client interface method, the one that we just created. Before call that, we have to first inject that. So I'm going to comment out this, the web client, and I'm going to inject API client. Let's import API client, and let's comment out this part where we use the web client. And I'm going to add a comment here. REST API call to customer service microservice using Feign client. So we need to get this customer DTO object, which is being used here. So to get the customer DTO object, we can call the API client that we just injected, and then there is a method in the API client called get customer by ID, and to that method we need to pass a customer ID of type long. So we can get the customer ID from this order object, just like we got the customer ID in the previous cases. Here and here also we got the customer ID from that order object. Similarly, we can get the customer ID from that order object like this. And now our Feign client implementation of REST API call is completed. So next we can test this. First, let's start the order service application. It started on port 8082. Customer service application is already running. So now our order service application is also running. So let's go to the Postman. And we have the request that we used earlier, get order by ID. Let's click the send button. And we are getting the response with 200 OK as the status code, and we are also getting the customer details.